Welcome back to the Tool Crib. Today we are going to be looking at a very specialized multi-tool, and that is the Leatherman Crunch. It's actually a multi-tool that I use, and you can tell by the scuff marks and the patina on this one that this tool gets used. Now, I don't use it every day, and it's actually so important to me that it's one of 4 multi-tools that I carry in the console of my truck just so I have them close at bay in the event that I need them. And it's because the Crunch does things that other multi-tools cannot do, and it's going to boil down mostly to the locking pliers functionality of this multi-tool. So we're going to get into the specs real quick, and then I'm going to walk you through the 15 different tools that are in this multi-tool, and then we're going to talk about whether or not this might be something you would consider using. Let's get started. For the specs on this, I'm going to be calling out it like its longest length all the way to the longest point and widest point. So while this is a 4-inch frame multi-tool, it's a standard duty multi-tool, the actual overall length is about 4 1/4 or 108 millimeters. The widest width on it is about 1.5 inches or 38 millimeters. It's 11/16 of an inch thick at its thickest point, which is about 17.5 millimeters. And it weighs in, it's not super heavy. At 6.73 ounces, it's not real heavy, or that translates to 189 grams. Well, let's get her opened up, and I'm going to walk through the interior tools first, and then we'll get into some of the other nuances about it, and then the main tool is going to be those locking pliers, what the Crunch is really all about. Before I jump into the interior tools, it does have a ruler. It's only about 4 inches long, or about 9.5 centimeters. I apologize, sometimes I misspeak. Let's get into the inside of it and take a look at the interior tools. First tool we have up for the interior, and by the way, all the interior tools lock out as well. So the first tool is a file. It's actually a combination tool. It's going to be single cut file, cross cut file, and then this is the large screwdriver. Now, the pattern is not super aggressive, and much like my criticism of the Leatherman Free P4, the file is really kind of short. So it's only, let's see, what is the length on that? I think it's 1.5 inches. So that's going to be about 38 millimeters, somewhere in that neighborhood, 38, 39. So it's not super large. You're not going to get a lot of work done with it. But in the Crunch, I think the interior tools are more, they're not really the biggest attributes to this tool, I guess is what I want to say. You don't buy the Crunch for the interior tools or for the extra tools. You buy it for the vice grip functionality. Let's get on to the next one. I actually found it easier just to fan those next 4 out. So what we have here is this small flat screwdriver, the medium screwdriver, which this one's going to be about 1/4 inch, this one about 3/16, and then you have your 3D Phillips. Now the Phillips on here is not going to be the greatest. I mean, it comes, it's decent, but it's not going to, here we go, it's not going to be something like the rebar where it has that kind of a truss frame to it. So this is quite a bit more robust than this is going to be, but it does work, and that is a combination number 1, number 2 Phillips. And then you also have the Lanyard Loop that is in this tool. Now that's not actually listed as one of its features, but you do have it available. Now the next blade or next tool is going to be your Serrated Blade. Now the Serrated Blade on here is only 1 13, a little over 1 3/4 at 1 13/16 of an inch, or about 46 millimeters. Now it does work. It's very sharp, just like all Leatherman. Actually, I've used it in a video before. It's a little short though. Sometimes I had to hit it a couple times with rope and trying to cut through larger rope. But it does work, and it's very sharp. Also has draw cut capability. Now our next function is actually listed in the diagram. You can see it on the diagram here. This is your wire stripper. So I've never been real effective with this particular wire stripper. So if we get it flipped around here, we can see it a little better. It actually has a cut edge in there. It actually has the ability to cut any insulation. So what you do is you send your wire through there, you adjust your screw to get it to the right size, and then you're able to kind of crimp down on it a little bit, twist it around, cut through the sheathing, and then strip it off. I've never been real good at using this wire stripper, and it's not super great, but in a pinch, if you had nothing else, then you do have the ability to do some wire stripping functionality with this multi-tool. Won't get up there very big. Probably the largest you're going to get is about 12 gauge, and that may even be a little bit big for it. I actually don't know what its full capacity is because I don't use it that often. I've tried to use it, I've just never been really good at it. Now for the next function, I've actually removed the adjustment screw so I can demonstrate this. So it's a little tedious to unscrew that, but you do have a 1/4 inch hex driver here, and we're going to get a couple bits in here to demonstrate this. So you can actually use the Leatherman bits. They'll slip right in there, and now you have a screwdriver. Also works with the extension, so you can set your extension in there, and now you have a pretty decent screwdriver actually. And then it will also accept standard 1/4 inch bits. And if you have just a standard, actually I have one here somewhere, bear with me just 1 second, right there. You can actually put a standard 1/4 inch extension in there, and now you have a really pretty robust screwdriver there. So I like the screwdriver on it. It works pretty well. It's just a little bit tedious to be pulling that screw head out of there, but if you're willing to accommodate that, then it's a pretty good screwdriver. Now there's 5 more functions on the Leatherman Crunch, and the last 2 are going to be the most important. So we have wire cutters and hard wire cutters. Now those work, but they're not going to work nearly as quickly or as good because you're going to have to adjust the screw in order to get them to the right adjustment. But they do work. So if you have the need for them in this multi-tool, you definitely have that ability. Then you have the regular pliers. Now these work in conjunction with the locking pliers because those will get onto, I think the max I've ever put it on where it held it really well was on 3/4 inch a Schedule 40 pipe, black pipe. It will grab that pretty well, and anything below that. 1 inch is a little bit too big for it, but it does come in handy for those situations. Now the last 2 tools are the most important, and this is why you would consider the Crunch, and that is obviously the front Needlenose locking pliers. Well, actually they call it out as Needlenose, regular pliers, and then also locking pliers. I can't remember. 15 functions in total, but the locking plier functionality of these is extremely robust. It works extremely well. And then at the front you also have what they call a pin vise. So if I get it flipped around here, I can show you. You can see that little groove in the end of the needle nose. Well, what that's for, and we're going to demonstrate that with the micro driver. We set the micro driver in there, and we can actually, well, I don't have it adjusted enough. We can actually set that micro driver in there, clamp down on it, and it holds it nice and straight. You can move it all over the place and it's going nowhere. So in the event that you need to grab on to something small like that, you definitely have that ability, and I've actually used that function quite a bit. So you can probably tell that this multi-tool is well worn. This is actually not part of my collection, and this is actually a multi-tool that I use. Now I don't use it every day, and it's what I consider a specialty multi-tool. And I like specialty multi-tools. I'm not all about the Surge, everything about the Surge, I mean, I love the Surge, and it's my best all-around multi-tool. But there are 4 multi-tools that I actually carry in the console of my truck that I don't carry on my person every day, but I do have a need to carry them. So I actually carry this at work sometimes. So what I have is I have a special pouch that houses my Surge, houses one of my bit sleeves, my saw blade, and then also my extension will fit in there. Now on days when I need it, I will pull all this out, and I will actually carry the Crunch in there. Let me get it folded up, and it fits perfectly in this sheath that I had made. If I can get it in the right direction, I guess it only goes in one way because of that little adapter, and then I can lock her down. And now I can carry the Crunch on me. Now that all gets a little heavy, but at work I don't mind it. The Crunch, I use it a lot for, I'll tell you what the uses I get out of it. I don't wear gloves a lot because I don't like wearing gloves because I feel less productive. I don't get things done when I'm wearing gloves. I'm just not one of those guys. I can't tighten on bolts. I can't put stuff together if I've got a big pair of gloves. It's just in my way. So the only time I really wear gloves is when it's extremely cold out or when it's extremely hot out, so I don't burn myself. Other than that, I don't wear gloves. And so when we're doing one of the tasks that we do is we build transitions, and those are just made out of regular plate steel, usually 10 gauge, sometimes 12, sometimes even thicker than that in 3/16, 7 gauge. And I will use it a lot whenever we're cutting a bunch of small parts for making stuff and for plate steel, as long as it's not too large of pieces, so I can handle them. Now, when we're cutting small parts with the plasma cutter, those can get very hot very quickly, and instead of grabbing it with my fingers, because I don't wear gloves, I'll use my Crunch in order to grab them, dip them in. You usually have a bucket of water that's close by because they're not super hot, but they're hot enough that they need to be cooled down. And then also use it for grabbing on the small parts to grind on stuff, because out on the job site, we don't always have a vise available to us, and so I can grab onto a small part and buff it out with the grinder while keeping my fingers out of the path of the grinding wheel or the buffing wheel. So I get a lot of use out of the Crunch. Now, I don't use it every single day, but I do keep it close at bay for those times that I do need it. Now, is it worth the price? Well, I'll tell you how I acquired mine. A few years ago, the day after Christmas, I got on eBay. Somebody had received it as a gift, decided they didn't want it, and immediately put it up on eBay. And I jumped on a buy it now price for $50, I believe it was. Well, back then, the Crunch was about $85, I think is what it retailed for. So I jumped on it, and it was one of the best purchases I ever made, actually, because I do get use out of it. The retail price on the Crunch today is $110. Is it worth it? Well, to the right person, I think it is. I think it's still a little overpriced. I would love to see it in that $85 range. Now, if they made a large frame version of this that was in a 4.5-inch frame, and proportionally bigger, then yeah, I would think it would be worth that, because now you have the ability to grab onto stuff that, especially on like a 1-inch Schedule 40 pipe, and it makes a great backup. And the ability to carry it on your person if you need to, because it will actually fold down and it's quite comfortable to carry. For the average person, I'm going to say no. $110 is a lot of money for a multi-tool that you'll rarely use. But if let's say you're a maintenance guy, or you're a guy that is in charge of an apartment complex where you're constantly doing little maintenance repair stuff, I'd say for that person, yeah, this is a great tool. And it was one I would definitely consider wearing. I do some maintenance work as well on equipment, and that's one of the biggest reasons that I carry the Crunch. So when I'm going out like that, and that's the reason it stays in my truck at all times, because I need it close by in case I do need it. Now, I could get and carry a regular set of vice grips for a lot cheaper than $110 for sure, no doubt about it. But they don't carry like this one's going to. And I didn't pay $110, so I can justify it. I paid $50, and for me, it was worth it. It's a stretch for me to say it's worth $110, though. I really wish the price was down a little further, and I haven't really checked around on this multi-tool to see if you can get it on a better deal. I'm hoping that you can, but I really don't know, and I haven't investigated that. But the Leatherman Crunch is definitely worth it to the right person, and it does have some of those functions that you can only get done with this style multi-tool. Now, other manufacturers have tried to make their own versions. I think Gerber had the Grappler, Kershaw had one, There was a couple of others, but they've all kind of gone by the wayside. I don't think any of those others are produced anymore. And the Leatherman Crunch is still in production. So apparently they're selling them. So it's definitely worth it to the right person. It's not worth it to the everyday guy. You're not going to get enough value out of it to warrant purchasing it. It definitely has a cool factor though, and I definitely use it. So for the right person, I say yes. But for the majority of people, and there's probably going to be about 95% of people out there, I'm going to say no, don't buy this multi-tool unless you're just a collector. And then, well, you know. At any rate, this has been my review of the Leatherman Crunch. It's a great multi-tool. It really is. The other implements are not fantastic, but then again, you're not buying it for that. So I think it's a fantastic multi-tool because I use it. At any rate, my review of the Leatherman Crunch. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one.